First of all, let me thank Madeline for the wonderful introduction. And Madeline's going to be going to Princeton next year, so her and Michelle were exchanging how special they were backstage. President is a cool title, but former teen poet, that is a pretty good title as well. And I'm proud to be both. I have to say my poems are not as good as yours, Madeline. But I was going to recite some poetry, but Michelle said no. She said, don't do that. No. Anyway, April is National Poetry Month. So Michelle and I figured what better way to celebrate than with some of America's brilliant young poets. And we've invited poetry fans of all ages to join us as well. And we have one of America's most gifted and accomplished poets, my dear friend Elizabeth Alexander, who's going to share some work with us, so I'm not going to speak long. Poetry matters. Poetry, like all art, gives shape and texture and depth of meaning to our lives. It helps us know the world. It helps us understand ourselves. It helps us understand others, their struggles, their joys, the ways that they see the world. It helps us connect. In the beginning, there was the Word. And I think it's fair to say that if we didn't have poetry, this would be a pretty barren world. In fact, it's not clear that we would survive without poetry. As Elizabeth once wrote, we encounter each other in words spiny or smooth, whispered or declaimed, words to consider, reconsider. That's the power of poetry. Sometimes it's only after reading a poem or writing a poem that we understand something that we already went through, that we felt, that we experienced. And that's why we often reach for poetry in big moments. When we fall in love, or lose somebody close to us, or leave behind one stage of life and enter into another. A good poem can make hard times a little easier to survive and make good times a lot sweeter. But poetry does not just matter to us as individuals, it matters to us as a people. The greatness of a country is not just the size of its military or the size of its economy or how much territory it controls. It's also measured by the richness of its culture. And America is America in part because of our poets and our artists and our musicians. All those who've shared their ideas and their stories and helped make us the vibrant and passionate and beautiful country that we are today. It's not every nation that produces poets like Elizabeth or like Madeline. There are parts of the world where poets are censored or they are silenced. But that's not how we do it here. That's one of the many reasons why we're such a special place. If you want to understand America, then you better read some Walt Whitman. If you want to understand America, you need to know Langston Hughes. Otherwise, you're missing something fundamental about who we are. Now, for the very special poet we have here today. I met Elizabeth when we were professors together at the University of Chicago. She and Michelle and I have been friends ever since. So when we were planning my first inauguration, we decided we better have a poet. And we thought we should have a poet that we know and we love. And she penned this extraordinary poem called Praise Song for the Day. You all should read it. On a day full of unforgettable moments, hearing Elizabeth read that poem was one of my favorite moments. And she has just written an amazing book that technically is not a poem, but is full of poetry. And I could not be prouder of her. So, congratulations to all the young poets. I look forward to reading your work or hearing your work. But right now, I want to introduce Ms. Elizabeth Alexander.
So I'm very, very happy to be here today. And first of all, and largest of all, I want to thank the President and the First Lady for inviting me here to work with these extraordinary young writers. I loved our time together. I wish that we could have had more. You did amazing work, and you've got to keep going with it. You're right there, and you've got to keep going. It was beautiful. And to think of that as a way to celebrate National Poetry Month, the sharing of new work with young people and people who have been writing for a long time in this special, special, special space is something for which I am extremely grateful. National Poetry Month began 19 years ago. The Academy of American Poets got it started. And this celebration today is emblematic of the many, many, many ways that the Obamas have shown us their steadfast commitment to and belief in the necessity of the arts in our daily lives, to show us who we are, to help us dream, to help us imagine beyond our immediate surroundings, as well as find the beauty in the day-to-day. So you grace us and you inspire us with everything you do. Thank you so much. So once again, to the students who I worked with today, our workshop was dedicated to the topic of writing on loss. That is something that no matter our age, no matter our circumstance, loss of some kind or another is something we know about and something we will continue to know about and something that exists hand in hand with love and feeling and joy. We know that we've lost something, we know that it matters to us because we loved it in the first place. The depth of loss is measured in part by the degree to which we love. So I once again want to just applaud the young people for being courageous and being so focused today. I also just want to say briefly that my own students from my freshman seminar on African American poetry at Yale came all the way from New Haven, Connecticut. They are right here. And so I think I like the kind of, traveling with your own posse concept. I think it's a good one. And their work and their devotion to African American poetry, their use of Claudia Rankine's term, traveling as a family. We are traveling as a family in their devotion to poetry and their devotion to each other. And finally, I just have to say, my family is here. My brother and sister-in-law, my mother and father, and my two beloved sons, Solo and Simon. So I'm glad that Madeline read an Ars Poetica. She quoted from Czesław Miłosz, his Ars Poetica. Those are poems, as many of you know, about the art of writing poetry. And so this is Ars Poetica 100, I Believe. Poetry, I tell my students, is idiosyncratic. Poetry is where we are ourselves, though Sterling Brown said, every I is a dramatic I, digging in the clam flats for the shell that snaps, emptying the proverbial pocketbook. Poetry is what you find in the dirt in the corner, over here on the bus, God in the details, the only way to get from here to there. Poetry, and now my voice is rising, is not all love, 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 and I'm sorry, your dog died. Poetry, here I hear myself loudest. Poetry is the human voice. And are we not of interest to each other? In the President's words about the light of the world that I'm going to turn to now to read from, it's not a book of poetry, but it's a book with poetry in it. It's a poet's book. It's not a book that I ever imagined that I would write, but it is a memoir that only a poet could have written. It came from the same place that poetry comes from, word by word, sound by sound, musical note by musical note, in very condensed musical short sections. It was a book that I wrote after the unexpected passing of my husband and the process of finding the road forward, word by word, with human beings as my companions, with love as my companion, and with art as my companion. So I'm going to read a few sections from The Light of the World. The story begins in 1962, when two women in cotton lawn maternity shifts approached the end of their pregnancies, one in Asmara, Eritrea, one in Harlem, USA. The low-hanging moon of impending childbirth governs their days. The ones we may come to love have been born by the time we start longing for them. And so my beloved and I came onto this earth in March and in May of 1962, halfway around the world from each other. Then, in 1996, we came together, one family who arrived in America as Eritrean refugees who had never been slaves, the other who landed 100 and 200 and 300 years ago, slaves and free, from Europe, Africa, and the Caribbean. Every beautiful day we lived, every single beautiful day. He who believed in the lottery, he who did not leave a large carbon footprint, he who never met a child he did not enchant, he who loved to wear the color pink, he whose children made him laugh until he cried, he who never told a lie, he who majored in physics, who knew the laws of the universe, he who wanted to win the lottery for me. We loved Jimmy Scott's version of the David Byrne song, Heaven. Heaven is a place where nothing ever happens. These days I picture heaven populated by the umber angels Ficre painted in abundance, but that seems too fanciful. I never truly believed in heaven and cannot manufacture it. Little Jimmy Scott's plaintiveness seems right when he sings, "Nothing ever happens." How better to describe the infinite solitude of the afterlife? When this kiss is over, it will start again. It will not be any different. It will be exactly the same, he sings. Each kiss is fixed. It is the same long kiss, but it will never change. That is the comfort, and that is the heartbreak. One night at bedtime, Simon asks if I want to come with him to visit Ficre in heaven. Yes, I say, and lie down on his bed. First you close your eyes, he says, and ride the clear glass elevator. Up we go. What do you see, I ask. God is sitting at the gates, he answers. What does God look like, I ask. Like God, he says. Now we go where Daddy is. He has 2 rooms, Simon says, one room with a single bed and his books and another where he paints. The painting room is vast. He can look out any window he wants and paint. That room has 4 views: our backyard, the dock he painted in Maine, Asmara, and New Mexico. New Mexico, I ask. Yes, Simon says, the volcano crater with the magic grass. Ah, yes, I say, the caldera, where we saw the gophers and the jackrabbits and the elk running across, and Daddy called it the veldt. Yes, do you see it? And I do. The light is perfect for painting. His bed in heaven is a single bed. Okay, it's time to go now, Simon says, so down we go. You can come with me any time, he says. Thank you, my darling. I don't think you can find it by yourself yet, he says, but one day you will. I come out of my first Pilates class exhilarated, blood flowing, stretched, and tall. It is the first time in ages I lose myself and forget. My tears come fast and sting just after I think I cannot wait to get to the phone to call Ficre and tell him. The poet Rilke surprises me how true and contemporary he feels in the Book of Hours, poems which he wrote as received spiritual messages or prayers. He wrote, "Let everything happen to you, beauty and sorrow. Just keep going. No feeling is final. Don't let yourself lose me. Nearby is the country they call life. You will know it by its seriousness. Give me your hand." For Rilke, God is the companion, the hand the reader is exhorted to take. Ficre is not my God, neither do I know who God is, but I find this force in art, in poems, and the community I have made. When we met those many years ago, I let everything happen to me, and it was beauty. Along the road, more beauty and fear and struggle and work and learning and joy. I could not have kept Ficre's death from happening and from happening to us. It happened. It is part of who we are. It is our beauty, and it is our terror. We must be gleaners from what life has set before us. If no feeling is final, there is more for me to feel. And so the story ends, or pauses, for as we know, it is all one long story. My sons and I have moved to New York City. Today we look out our window at the Hudson River and wait for another hurricane as the sky turns lavender and orange, Ficre colors. When the rain is most dramatic, we feel him close. The boys grow taller than everyone around them and become young men. Their grandfather turns 80, and with my mother, they circle the wagons and leave their home in Washington, D.C., where I grew up, and return to New York, their ancestral metropolis, to be extended family with us as Ficre always wanted it. New York is the place that called Ficre as well, a place with mythos, a place where everyone belongs. Now I live in a neighborhood of stage doors and students walking down the street with huge instrument cases. The dancers pirouette on Lincoln Center Plaza and clatter down the street in high fabulosity. They are the children making art. Ficre was one of the children at the Art Students League, but he was never a child and always a child, that rare combination true to his position on the zodiac, ancient and brand new, as anyone who knew him would say. I am in New York City, where I was born, where I have spent decades trying to return. Welcome home, I am told many times, even by people who do not know me or know that I was born in Harlem, USA, at 135th and 5th, in the Riverton Apartments, at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital, where my father was also born. Ficre and I never made it here together. That was planned for when the children graduated from high school. Death sits in the comfortable chair in the corner of my new bedroom, smoking a cigarette. It is a he, sinuous and sleek, wearing a felt-brimmed hat. He is there when I wake in the middle of the night, sitting quietly, his smoke a visible curl in the New York lights that come in between the Venetian blind slats. At first, I am startled to see him. He sits so near, is so at home. But he doesn't move toward me. He simply cohabits, and so eventually I return to sleep. He isn't going anywhere, but he isn't going to take me either. In the morning, the chair is empty. Which is stronger, death sitting in the corner or life in New York City? Death or my teenage sons sleeping profoundly in the next room, growing overnight? I love plans, my new friend Esther exults, and so do I, for nowadays I feel sometimes like plans are what stand between me and the end of my life. I'm not going to die overnight, because next Wednesday I am going with Esther to see an auction of 19th century American documents at Swan Gallery. I am not going to die tonight because I already took the chicken out of the freezer, and Simon loves roast chicken and rice for dinner, and I promised him I would make it. I'm not going to die tonight because on Saturday, Farah and I are bundling up and going for a walk against the blustery winds along the river to continue the conversation we began almost 30 years ago when we were both in graduate school, before I even knew my beloved Ficre. It's not easy to die, sweetie, Ficre used to say to me when I'd wake in a panic some nights. I've seen people survive, and I know. I'd always had bad dreams, and his words and presence were all that ever calmed me down. It's not easy to die. Life force is actually mighty, and I have life force. It is not indelible, but it can behave like it is. We all die, but we don't die easily. Though it seemed he slipped away, it could not have been easy. The heart inside of him beat all the beats it was allocated, but in his 50 years, the man lived. Not nearly enough, but not insufficiently. He found his life's work thrice, as an activist, as a chef, and as a painter. He understood himself as something larger than himself, his mighty extended family of origin, his beloved native land and its people. He found love and became part of a new extended family and a new people. He had children and made family, most important of all to him. A statue of Frederick Douglass stands at the quiet 77th Street entrance of the New York Historical Society, tall and mighty. He is someone who journeyed to freedom, I think, and I was married to someone who walked to freedom. The culmination of the freedom was love and family. That's all he did. That's what he did. I hear my voice to my children. Your father walked to freedom. At my father's 80th birthday, I tell the room that when Fikre and I met, he told me he was not interested in anyone who did not love and honor her parents. He found too much of that. In New York, I feel joy overwhelming, and this same gratitude for Fikre brought me here. I am sure of it, as sure as if he whispered in my ear, "Go, Lizzie, you are so much braver than you realize. Take the children and go." What are the odds, we used to say, what are the odds that we would end up in the same place and fall in love? Once upon a time, halfway around the world, two women were pregnant at the same time in very different places, and their children grew up and found each other. It happens every day. Thank you.
Wow, huh? And I'm supposed to talk after that, right? Well, hello, everyone. I'm thrilled that all of you could join us today for our National Poetry Month celebration with a fantastic, phenomenal, I don't know what to say about my friend, my girl, Elizabeth Alexander. She read for us this weekend, a group of friends, and we were all in tears, and I'm trying to hold it together now. But what a gift, what a gift. I want to start by thanking the President's Committee on the Arts and the Humanities for their leadership and their work in planning this wonderful event, and for the outstanding work that they're doing to bring the arts to young people across this country. And again, I want to thank Elizabeth for gracing us with her presence today. Now, you all have heard her read from her writing, which is powerful, so you don't need me to tell you that she is a genius. You know, what? It's pretty clear now. Thelma's like, ah. And for years, Barack and I have just treasured our friendship. And we've been spellbound with your talent. And as for her book, The Light of the World, you know, it just takes your breath away. Somehow through this beautiful memoir, Elizabeth has been able to find her way through crushing grief over the loss of her husband, our friend Fikre. Hers was the kind of grief that would leave most of us unable to function normally. Yet she took all that grief and she transformed it into something beautiful and powerful, not just for herself, but for anyone who has ever lost someone they love. So this book is not just an achievement for her, it's also a lifeline for others who are overwhelmed by their own grief. It's Elizabeth's way of telling us all, you are not alone. You will eventually find your way out to the other side. and the love you felt for the one you lost will ultimately be your salvation. And that's really the power of writing, right? First and foremost, writing can be a form of healing for the writer and for the reader. It can be a way of unlocking and untangling powerful emotions. And that's a message especially that I want to emphasize to the student poets who are here today, that when you take all those painful, noisy, confusing feelings that are in your head and you find a way to get them on a page, then suddenly they're not so bad. Suddenly they don't hurt quite as much. Because when you're working through those words and those rhythms and those rhymes, you're also working through those emotions. And when you're finished, it's amazing how liberating you can feel. And that's true no matter what kind of writing that you do, whether it's poetry or journaling or short stories, even rap. Yes, rap. Because rap is definitely poetry. Snap, snap, snap. But for the younger students, it's even true for the writing you do for school. That sort of boring stuff that my kids work through every day. Every essay or report that you write is truly an opportunity to express yourself. Hopefully you approach your writing like that. To take all that creativity, all that passion from your poetry brain and use it to unleash your academic brain. It's the same stuff working. Here at the White House, we're guided by the belief that the arts can be the key to success in school and in life. That's why we do what we do. We believe that deeply. And that's the basic idea that drives every cultural event that we host here in this home. When we bring renowned artists to the White House, and we do it a lot, people come here, it's kind of cool. We always ask them to host a workshop for students the afternoon before they perform. And that's exactly what Elizabeth did just a few hours ago with many of you. And she had a special workshop for the student poets. How'd you guys enjoy it? Great. Is it good? See, now that's sincere. That's like, it was palpable. It's like, it was so great. She's really cool, isn't she? And real smart. So you can be cool and smart and stylish and beautiful. Can have it all, right? And I know that for so many folks in this room, particularly folks on the committee, have devoted their lives to doing the exact same thing in schools across the country, working tirelessly to bring arts education to our young people. And I can't stress enough how important that work is. Can't stress it enough, because we know that kids who are involved in the arts have higher grades, higher graduation rates, higher college enrollment rates, and on and on and on. Arts is not a luxury, you know. Everyone needs it. So really, arts education is the reason why so many kids in this country get out of bed every day. It is the only thing that gets them snap, snap, snap. Come on. So here's what we do. We hook them with the arts, and once we get them into those classrooms, then we can teach them some of that other stuff they don't really like. Math, history, all that stuff. So we're not just shaping the future Elizabeth Alexanders of the world, but also the future lawyers and teachers and scientists and historians and business leaders. It's all connected. And what I want to end today by simply saying is thank you to all of you in this room, to Elizabeth, our teachers, to all the folks who are dedicated to that vitally important work, because too many kids in our country will never experience this. They will never learn how to write a poem. They will never learn how to appreciate the works of any of the great poets. They will never play an instrument. They will never, be in a band or sing in a choir. And that's something I want the young people to understand, is that you all are blessed. Just by being in this room, you are blessed. And because you are blessed, it is now your duty, Madeline, we talked about this the last time you were here, is to pass it on. Yeah. Pass it on. That's your job. That's the rent you are paying for sitting in these seats. especially our Yale students, because you're coming up next. You guys have got to find the young people in your world, and you got to pull them in and give them these opportunities and to expose them, because this kind of stuff saves lives. We see it every day. It does. Snap, snap. So I want to thank everyone here for supporting the PCAH and all the other efforts around the country to inspire arts education and music and dance and everything else that goes on in our schools. And I want to thank Elizabeth and the Alexander and Gabriesus family for being here to celebrate with us this day. And I hope you guys pass it on. Just keep going, keep working hard. We're proud of you. We believe in you. We expect you to be inhabiting this home. Somebody out here has the potential to be standing here doing this stuff in a few years. So get to work, all right? Thank you all. God bless.